नमस्ते, गुड आफ्टरनून। आयरलैंड भारत परिषद की तरफ से मैं आप सभी को गणतंत्र दिवस की शुभकामनाएं देता हूं। We welcome you all on the occasion of Republic Day of India. Ireland India Council celebrating these days like Independence Day and Republic Day and St. Patrick's Day, that is a Irish National Day, since last number of years. This is a day which has a lot of significance with Ireland, with India, and freedom around the world. And there's no other day is better than Republic Day of India or St. Patrick's Day to discuss freedom, constitution, and how this globe can manage and govern. Today, I am very lucky to have Justice K Thomas. He's very kindly agreed to speak on this occasion. Justice Thomas has decades of experience in dealing or giving justice to millions, or I can say 1.3 billion people in India. He was born on 30th January 1937. He's a former judge of the Supreme Court of India, known for his strong opinions with regard to Indian socio-political milieu. He was awarded the Padma Bhushan by the Indian government in 2007 for services to the field of social affairs. After his schooling, Justice Thomas at Baker Memorial School, he completed his pre-university course from CMS College, Kottayam, and BA at St. Albert's College, Ernakulam, where he served as the college union chairman. He studied law at Madras Law College. He enrolled as an advocate in 1960 and started his career in Kottayam as junior advocate to Joseph Pelikal, a leading lawyer of those days. Soon, he set up his private practice at District Court Kottayam and later at the High Court of Kerala. In 1997, he was directly selected as District and Sessions Judge, securing the first rank in the selection test. He was promoted as a judge of the High Court of Kerala in 1985 and served as the acting Chief Justice in 1995. In 1996, he was appointed as a judge of the Supreme Court of India. During his practice as an advocate, he led an Indian delegation to attend the World Conference on Peace held in Texas, the USA, in 1976. He was also served as the chairman of the commission set up in the World Conference. Justice Thomas retired from service in 2002 and he left at Muttam Bulam in Kottayam district. His autobiography, Honeybees of the Solomon, published in 2008, is an account of his judicial service of 25 years, which has since been published in Malayalam in the name Solomonate, Teskachel. His son, Justice Bichukorian, who was one of the youngest to a distinguished senior advocate of the Kerala High Court, was sworn in as additional judge of the Kerala High Court in March 2020. Justice Thomas presided the Supreme Court bench that confirmed the death sentence in the Rajiv Gandhi assassination case. Thank you, Justice Thomas, for accepting our invitation. Now, dice is yours, and please give your remarks on 72nd Republic Day of India. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving me this very auspicious occasion to address you all. I also thank you, Mr. Prashant Shukla, who made a short introduction and Mr. John Chandy for initiating me into this matter, particularly on an important day in annals of Indian history. Today is, as pointed out by Mr. Shukla, this is the 72nd anniversary of the Republic of India. Republic means the day when the entire Indian continent had been brought under one law called the Constitution of India. According to some pundits, Indian Constitution is the most important event in the history of the world. Many constitutional experts expressed that it is a wonder. When India attained independence in 1947, one-third of the Indian geographical territory, which was under the British government's suzerainty alone, became independent. The remaining two-thirds was under the suzerainty of 565 sovereign monarchs. British Parliament permitted the monarchs to have the option either to remain without joining in the Indian Union or with Pakistan, or to join with either of them. Some of the sovereign states declared as independent nations. For example, the state of Travancore, where I live, declared as an independent nation under the Maharaja of Travancore. Even that nation at that time appointed ambassadors in foreign countries. Some of the states, larger than many European countries, with a powerful army, can be cited as an example of the vast potentiality under which all these independent sovereign states had been integrated into one union called the Republic of India. All the 565 independent states, when they were integrated, this is under the work of the Constituent Assembly, which is consisted of representations from all these states. They deliberated on each of the articles for the Constitution, which probably became the largest among all the constitutions in the democratic world. There are 395 articles arranged in 22 parts with 8 schedules. The Constituent Assembly members took a very long period of 3 years, only 13 days short of completing 3 years, for completing the deliberations and to make the final draft of the Constitution. That is why this is considered to be the largest among the constitutions in the world. The Constituent Assembly was inspired or took models from other constitutions such as United States of America, Japan, and Ireland. I am very happy to mention that Irish constitution became an inspiration for many of the articles. After the constitution was completed, some of the legal experts expressed their views. Sir Ivor Jennings was considered to be a constitutional expert of a very high ranking. He said the Indian Constitution is too prolix and too lengthy, but he predicted that within 6 to 7 years it would collapse. So when Sir Winston Churchill, who was the Prime Minister of Britain, predicted that through balkanization, this republic is likely to disintegrate into several nations within a decade. But all those predictions became untrue as the republic became very strong, even after the 71 years. Not only there were no balkanization and no collapse, but the republic became stronger and in some respect became larger with additions of geographical territories. During the last 71 years, the Constitution has faced many challenges for its survival. The most difficult was on account of the power of Parliament to amend the Constitution of India. Article 368 of the Constitution allowed the Parliament to amend the Constitution with a two-third majority. And using the two-third majority, the Constitution has been thus far amended 104 times. This number is much larger than even older Constitution. It is a welcome thing that the Constitution could be updated, amended for meeting the situations which may arise, which could be unforeseen at the time when it was made. But that is in a way a plus side of it, but the flip side of it is there was with a two-third majority. One day the Parliament amended even the very amending article, Article 368 itself, enabling the Parliament to amend the Constitution without any limitation. This is really the first challenge which the Constitution had to face. Fortunately, that amendment was thwarted by the Supreme Court of India when the largest number of judges in a bench, 13 judges, pronounced a judgment in what is known as the Keshavananda Bharati case. Though the majority is a very narrow one, just one, a thin majority, it held that the amending power has inherent limitations, that the basic features of the Constitution must be kept intact. The basic features are to be decided as and when the situation arises. The basic features have not been defined. That is why it is left to the situation in future. Now, the more than 1.5 lakh citizens were detained under a draconian law which enabled the Constitution, which enabled the government to detain them without trial. This is because there was a very narrow interpretation given to one of the pivotal articles in the Indian Constitution, this Article 21. That article, though very short article, it says that no person shall be deprived of his liberty or life except in accordance with the procedure established by law. The initial interpretation given by the Constitution bench of the Supreme Court on this article is the law indicated in that article, if it is after complying with the rules of practice prescribed, then that is enough to become a law by which the life and liberty of citizens can be taken away. This interpretation helped a government at that time to pass the draconian law with a two-third majority and then detain people. That period is known as the emergency period of the internal emergency of the Indian Constitution, of the Republic of India. But Fortunately, subsequently, that interpretation has been overruled by the Supreme Court, a larger bench, and said the law indicated in Article 21 should not be confined to a law passed by the legislature, but it must pass the test of just, fair, and reasonable also. If a law is not just, if it is not reasonable, if it is arbitrary, then Article 21 is hit by that. Because of the larger interpretation later came, the rights of the citizens embodied in the Constitution could be protected thereafter. Now, we will consider what are the human rights mentioned in the Constitution. I'll particularly restrict to the natural human rights indicated in Article 19 of the Constitution. They are freedom of expression and speech, the right to assemble peaceably, and the right to move freely, and the right to carry on any occupation for eking out a living. The Constitution said such human rights can be controlled or curtailed only for the limited object of imposing reasonable restrictions for safeguarding public or national interest. What are such interests are also indicated in Article 19 in subclause 2.
बंद कर दो सारे
Now a word about,
बंद करो ये
is there
क्यों
any,
ऐसा हो
is
रहा
there
है
anything, any disturbance? Is there any disturbance? Or can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. Then now a word about the directive principles of state policy. This is incorporated in a separate part of the Constitution. That part is numbered as Part 4. Directive principles of state policy are included for the purpose of keeping the government informed as a guidance for governance of the country. It is the duty of the lawmaking bodies to apply those principles in making laws. Many guidelines have been shown in that part. One of them became a very controversial later on. That is called the state shall endeavor to secure a uniform civil code throughout the territory of India. Though most of the law are uniform in India, only the personal law based on religious laws are different, remaining different. That is, personal law means the right of inheritance, the marriage, succession, etc. But the live wire of the Constitution is created through Article 32 and Article 226. In a federal setup of the Indian Constitution, the high courts of the state are considered to be the highest court of that state, and Supreme Court is made as an apex court. And Article 32 will apply to the apex court. Article 32 itself is a fundamental right that any citizen can move the Supreme Court for protection of his fundamental right if there is any variation in that. By and large, I would say that the Supreme Court of India and the High Court for each state have succeeded in discharging their duties. That may be the crucial reason why Indian Constitution continues even on this the 72nd day without any glitch. A prediction was made, as I pointed out by Sir Ivor Jennings, that it may not last beyond 7 years. Sir Ivor Jennings was appointed by the then Ceylon government to, to to draft a constitution for that country. He made it. That is, after making the earlier prediction, he made a constitution for Ceylon. You look at the irony that when he predicted the Indian constitution will collapse within 7 years, but the constitution of Ceylon, which he drafted and created, collapsed after 7 years. Whereas Indian constitution is now thriving and throbbing even after the 7 decades. That is a matter on which I am very happy to live through the entire period. When the India became a republic, I was just 10 years old, or 10. No, I'm sorry. I would have been 13 years, and I have seen how the republic had been declared. Now I continue during all this period when the constitution has faced challenges and outlived them, and the constitution remains intact even today as a protection umbrella for the people of India. May I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity and to address you on this important subject on this important day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justice Thomas. It was really very learning to us, and particularly to our audience. They can't attend this actually event in person, but it is we are broadcasting it at various social media channels. So many people are watching in Ireland, and so many people are watching in India as well. Thank you so much, Justice Katie Thomas, for your wise words. Just I want to acknowledge here that Deputy Charlie O'Connor is also joined us, as well as Damien O'Neill and Jerry Henley. So our next speaker is Dr. Adish Chandra Agrawala, is a jurist and the president of International Council of Jurists, chairman of All India Bar Association, convener of Indian Council of Jurists, chairman of India Legal Information Institute, secretary general of All India Senior Advocates Association, and patron of All India Law Students Association. In 2009, Agrawala authored the book Constitution of India, the foreword contributed by Justice K.G. Balakrishnan, the 37th Chief Justice of India. He presented the book to the President of India, Pratibha Devi Singh Patil. He had also co-authored with British author Ms. Sarah J. McCurtain the biographical coffee table book, Narendra Modi, a charismatic and visionary statesman. Thank you, Dr. Agrawal. Now, I would like to invite you for your talk. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Honorable Mr. Charlie Flanagan, Member of Irish Parliament and former Minister for Justice and Equality, Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade, Minister for Children and Youth Affairs and Chair of Fine Gael Parliamentary Party. Honorable Mr. Justice K.T. Thomas, who has been honored with Padma Bhushan by Government of India and who has been the most respected judge, who served as the Judge of Supreme Court of India, acting Chief Justice of Kerala High Court and Judge of the Kerala High Court, my friend Prashant Shukla, Chairman of Ireland India Council, Mr. Damien Nee, co-chair of Ireland India Council, my friend Mr. C.M. Patel, an eminent attorney at Supreme Court of India and one of the leader of the Indian Bar, Miss Devisha Mohan, public relations intern at Ireland India Council, Mr. John K. Chandy, CEO of Hepta Container Inc., and Mr. Gary Henley of Heritage and Culture, and dear friends from Ireland and India. I am delighted to be associated with the panel discussion on the similarities between the Irish and Indian constitution as a part of Indian Republic Day celebrations being organized by I- Ireland India Council. At the outset, I would like to state that the edifice on which the growth and progress of a country in a highly polarized world depends is its constitution. The constitution is the document from which a series of ideals and principles emanate that help a society retain its conscience. In fact, the importance and the value that a constitution holds can be gauged from the words of none other than Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who said, Constitution is not a mere lawyer's document. It is a vehicle of life, and its spirit is always the spirit of age. Before elucidating on the similar features and commonalities of the Indian and Irish constitution, I deem it important to briefly apprise you of the meticulous process that each of these great nations followed before giving the citizens the gift of their respective constitutions. In India, the charge of drafting the Constitution was bestowed upon a Constituent Assembly comprising 299 delegates who debated and deliberated for 114 days spread over the timeline of 2 years, 11 months, and 18 days before the mammoth task was completed. The Indian Constitution was adopted by the Constituent Assembly on 26th November 1949 and finally came into force on 26th January 1950. This day, fateful day, when all Indians in unison celebrate what is proudly referred to as the Republic Day. And today, also, we are celebrating with great pride. On the other hand, the modern constitution of Ireland came into force on 29th December 1937 after it replaced the 1922 constitution. Interestingly, it is available in both English and Irish language, but in case of conflict, the Irish version prevails. This constitution paved the way for a liberal representative democracy in Ireland. Interestingly, it is said that when the Indian constitution was being drafted, the leaders of the Constituent Assembly sought advices from Eamon de Valera of Ireland, who brought to the table a rich experience in the realms of constitutional drafting. Now, coming to the similarities of the two constitutions, it is needless to say that because the Irish constitution preceded the Indian one, it was bound to have an influence on the latter. Experience is a great teacher, and the Irish had considerable experience with their constitution and its functioning before the Indian constitution was even drafted. Both the constitutions are written constitutions as opposed to the Constitution of Britain, which is unwritten. The two constitutions provide for liberal representative democracy and establishment of bicameral legislatures. Therefore, the scheme of the two constitutions is very similar. The two constitutions have incorporated a preamble. While the Irish Constitution's preamble inter alia starts with the words "We, the people of Ire," the Indian Constitution preamble starts with the words "We, the people of India." The Irish Constitution has a separate article, being Article 5, to state that Ireland is a sovereign, independent, and democratic state. The forefathers of Indian Constitution included these features in the preamble itself. The two constitutions provide for elaborate mechanism defining the form of the government, powers of the executive, and the parliament and the judiciary. The Irish and Indian constitutions have both incorporated chapters on fundamental rights and directive principles of social policy. As some of you may be aware, the chapter on directive principles of state policy in the Indian Constitution have been borrowed from the Irish Constitution. Therefore, the point I had made about the being a considerable Irish influence on the Indian Constitution is further highlighted. More importantly, I would like to end by saying that it is important to uphold the constitutional principles in our hearts, as was stated by the great Indian jurist Nani Palkiwala, who said, Dharma or Dharma lives in the hearts of public men. When it dies, there no constitution, no law, no amendment can save it. Thank you very much, Mr. Prashant Suklaji, for giving me this opportunity to speak on this topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Agarwal. It was a lot of learning from your presentation, and we really appreciate that you attended today. And I hope we will continue our relationship in future. Now, our guest is Deputy Charlie Flanagan. He is representing Loish Offaly County. He was the Minister for Justice and Equality until 27 June 2020. He was appointed to the role of on 14 June 2017, having previously served as Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade. He was Minister for Children and Youth Affairs for a period in 2014. During his tenure as Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade, he represented the Irish government in the talks processes leading to the Stormont House Agreement 2014 and the Fresh Start Agreement 2015. Along with the Taoiseach, he co-convened the All-Iceland Civic Dialogue on Brexit and played a senior role in advancing Ireland's strategic interest in the period leading up to the triggering of Article 50 and the establishment of the EU negotiating directives in respect of the UK's withdrawal from the EU. Mr. Charlie Flanagan was first elected to represent Laois Offaly in Dáil Éireann in 1987 and was a member of Laois County Council from 1987 to 2004. His father, Oliver J. Flanagan TD, represented Laois Offaly from 1943 to 1987 and served as Minister for Defence 1976 to 1977, Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister for Defence 1975 to 1976, and Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister for Agriculture 1954 to 1857. Charles Flanagan served as chairperson of the Fine Gael Parliamentary Party 2011 to 2014 and was the leader of the Fine Gael group at the Constitutional Convention. He served as Fine Gael Chief Whip 2000 to 2002 and was the party's spokesperson in a diverse range of portfolios. During his career as a TD, including health and enterprise, trade and employment. During the 30th Dial, he was Flanagan front bench spokesperson on children and youth affairs 2010 to 2011, and Justice, Equality and Defense 2007 to 2010, playing a very active role in contributing legislation and Flanagan policy. He was Flanagan spokesperson on Northern Ireland from 1997 to 2000 and vice chair of the British Irish Parliamentary Group from 1997 to 2000. He chaired inter-area Directive Subcommittee on Legislation and Security 1994-1997 and served as vice chair of the Directive Joint Committee on Women's Rights 1995-1997. A qualified solicitor who practiced law for many years, he has published draft bills and amendments in a range of legislative areas, including competition law, corruption, white-collar crime, fraud, and bribery. He was educated in Cockpit College, University College Dublin, BA degree in History and Politics, and the Incorporated Law Society of Ireland. Deputy Flanagan, as you know, I just want to elaborate for our Indian viewers. TD means Member of Parliament, Oireachtas means Parliament. So, and on my personal note, in 2015, he hosted Indian Minister of Foreign Affairs, and I believe in during that tenure he also hosted Indian Prime Minister visited Ireland in 2015. So please give him a very round of applause. Deputy Flanagan.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Can I in the first instance say how privileged I am to be in such august company this afternoon, and to thank you very much, Prashant, for your kind invitation, acknowledging my close personal relationship with my friend of many years standing, a member of your council, Mr. Damien Nee. I merely want to acknowledge the great interest in your talk, in your seminar this afternoon, and in doing so, I want to say a few words about the excellent bilateral relations between Ireland and India. I had the very great pleasure early in my parliamentary career back in 1989 to pay a visit to India. A parliamentary visit during which I had the opportunity of meeting directly with Premier Rajiv Gandhi, and also had the most memorable experience, which I will bring to my grave, of visiting the grave of the great Indira Gandhi. And as Prashant has just said, many years later, and in more recent times, had the opportunity, along with my friend and former boss, Enda Kenny, our Prime Minister, of hosting a visit of Premier Modi when he visited us in Dublin some years ago. I want to acknowledge the great contribution made to Irish society and the Irish economy of the 45,000 people who comprise the Indian community in Ireland. And in particular, the fact that 20% of our health service executive staff comprise doctors and nurses and healthcare workers of Indian ancestry and origin. And during these very difficult times of COVID-19, which of course is responsible for our not being together around the table this afternoon, I want to acknowledge in particular the work of Indian nationals towards the battle against COVID-19 in Ireland. It is a challenge, and we all hope, both in Ireland and India, irrespective of our constitutional similarities or otherwise, that we can use our laws and our society to very good effect in defeating COVID-19 from our communities. I'm very pleased as Minister for Justice in 2018 to ensure, by way of order, that access to the labour market was somewhat eased for spouses and partners of those engaged in our critical skill employment permits for Ireland, which covered many healthcare workers from India, ensuring a greater level of access, a greater ease of access for spouses and partners, and the removal of the need for re-entry visa for those holding a GNIB card here in Ireland. And similarly, as Minister for Justice, I was very pleased in conjunction with the Police Commissioner, Drew Harris, to introduce a directive for the wearing of the turbans in the Garda uniform, our police uniform. And only last week, I want to acknowledge the entry into our police force as a reserve of Mr. Ravinel Singh Oberoi, the first member of the Irish Police Service to wear a turban. And I want to wish him well in that regard. I want also to acknowledge the 5,000 Indian students across Ireland, many of them making a huge contribution to our academia, our economy and our society, mainly involved in postgraduate IT studies, in medical studies and in science. And it is my hope that many of those highly qualified Indian nationals will make their home with us in Ireland. Although I'm sure that practicing politicians like myself in India would wish that they would return home to India, having honed their professional skills in Ireland. In any event, I merely want to say that we have excellent bilateral relations between Ireland and India, and it's days like today that we reflect on that relationship and that we agree to intensify what is a very important relationship on the world stage. As Minister for Foreign Affairs and again as Minister for Justice, I was very proud of the engagement between Ireland and India on the world stage, particularly our membership of the United Nations. Ireland and India both took up seats on the non-permanent members of the UN Security Council for 21-22 on the 1st of January, a few short weeks ago. The approach of Ireland will be underpinned by three core principles: building peace, strengthening prevention, and ensuring accountability, in line with which Ireland has identified specific priorities, including improving peacekeeping mandates, highlighting drivers of conflict such as climate and hunger, and promoting respect for international law and accountability under our respective constitutions, improving humanitarian access in Syria. And I want to acknowledge that India has begun its 8th term as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council with the stated objective of raising its voice against terrorism, speaking for the developing world and bringing human-centric inclusive solutions to matters of global peace and security. And in that regard, again, I want to point out two similar objectives between Ireland and India, that as members of the non-permanent, as non-permanent members of the Security Council, that we can work together with our shared objectives under our respective constitutions. In this regard, I was very pleased as Minister for Foreign Affairs to attend the 30th anniversary commemoration in Ahakista, County Cork, of the Air India disaster caused by a terrorist bomb planted by Sikh extremists in Canada some years ago. And Ireland and India, again under our constitutions, respect rule of law and mandates and condemn unequivocally acts of both domestic and international terrorism. India is the 4th highest contributor to personnel to UN peacekeeping operations. More than 200,000 Indians have served in 49 of the 71 UN peacekeeping missions established around the world over the past 72 years. Peacekeeping is a proud Irish tradition. Since June 1958, not a day has passed without an Irish soldier deployed under a UN flag somewhere around the world. Irish peacekeepers are present in over half of the UN's current peacekeeping operations. And again, I know India shares that endeavour. I want to acknowledge very briefly the situation under COVID-19, where Ireland and India assisted citizens from other countries, including through repatriation flights during the current pandemic. India currently has the second highest number of global infections, 10.6 million. But I want to acknowledge in recent times the great professional work undertaken in India, which now sees a current production of 60% of the world's vaccines, and then again beginning as a nationwide vaccination campaign over the past week under the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine and the indigenously developed Covaxin. The first recipients will include 30 million doctors and nurses, other frontline workers in India. To us here in Ireland, these numbers are absolutely staggering, and I want to congratulate you for what you're doing. In fact, I was very pleased just over the weekend past to read in my Sunday newspapers here in Portlaoise the very generous act on the part of the Indian authorities by making the COVID vaccine available to neighbouring Myanmar. And again, as chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Dublin Parliament, COVID justice and COVID justice vaccine equality is an issue that will be high on our agenda during the course of our year. I want to acknowledge the important points raised by Mr. Justice Thomas earlier. And he's right. It is a common view in Indian Irish circles that the Indian Constitution is based on the Irish one. As we might say in Ireland, it's true, but it's not entirely true. The clearest demonstration of this is that the 1950 Indian Constitution is 145,000 words long, compared to the 16,000 words of the 1937 Irish Constitution. India had to deal with many challenges that Ireland did not, such as the massive challenge of folding dozens of princely states into one system. However, elements of the 1950 Constitution are very clearly inspired by our 1937 counterpart, which should be seen as one of a range of models. The preamble, for example, to the Indian Constitution was inspired by the French. The model of democracy it underscores by the British. And again, similarly, the parliamentary model, not dissimilar to ours in Ireland, emanating from what we described as the mother of parliaments in Westminster. Want to acknowledge the federalism, the federalist nature, as again referred to by Justice Thomas, inspired by the Canadians, and the separation of powers and judicial features, which come in the main from the United States of America. The borrowing from the Irish Constitution take two forms. The first is the method for nominating members of the Parliament and for nominating candidates to the presidency, which are closely based in India from what we were doing in Ireland. And secondly, the directive principles of state policy of India are the 15 guidelines for the federal government to be cited while framing laws and policies. These are based on the directive principles of social policy in the Irish Constitution, though not as closely based as those in the 1962 Constitution of your neighbours in Nepal, which were a verbatim translation of the Irish ones. While the Irish principles have limited real effect, they are not legally enforceable. But the Indian framers took the idea, expanded it further, and enshrined it into the heart of the Indian Constitution. And I'm sure these are issues that will gain further prominence in the context of the panel discussion later on. I want to acknowledge, in conclusion, the historic and cultural and great community connections between Ireland and India. The first, many centuries ago, were the missionaries sent by religious organizations from Ireland and functionaries of the British colonial structures in India. That work continues until the present day, although I want to acknowledge now many Indian religious leaders in the Christian tradition who are now assisting us in terms of pastoral duties in Ireland. I want to acknowledge the great ties that bring us together to celebrate as well as commemorate the 72nd anniversary of the Indian Constitution, and acknowledge the inspiration of the Irish and Indian independence movements, which had the effect or the consequence of inspiring each other. The growing consciousness of each other's national identities was fed by the friendship and collaboration between the future Nobel, the then future Nobel laureate W.B. Yeats and Tagore in the 1910s, and the vital connections being made by the independence activist and orator Annie Besant. The mutiny of the Connaught Rangers in Jalandhar in 1920 in support of Irish independence is commemorated every year. And Embassy New Delhi, the Irish Embassy, organised a major conference to mark that centenary. I want to acknowledge Vaharajiri Giri, a future president of India who studied in Ireland in 1910 and engaged with Irish independent movement prior to our 1916 revolution, studying with the great Irish patriot Thomas MacDonagh, witnessing our 1913 lockout, and 3 years later, the Easter Rising of 1916. The Irish Indian Independence League was formed in 1932, and Vijay Patel, a brother of one of Nehru's closest allies, indeed paid a visit to Ireland a number of times in the 1920s and 30s to engage with the leaders of Irish independence. His movements in Ireland were tracked by a branch of the British Intelligence Service with responsibility for India, which was headed up at the time by a Trinity College graduate by the name of Philip Vickery. Some of Patel's activities were in the open. A league meeting outside Trinity College in College Green in 1932 attracted as many as 3,000 people, and Patel attended the unveiling of the Countess Markievicz Memorial in that same year. The Irish Press, great national newspaper of the day, noted, and I quote, a white-clad grey-haired figure in a square with a white Gandhi cap. Indeed, at that time, Mr. Patel looked quite at home in a Dublin crowd of 3,000 people. I want to acknowledge again the more controversial Subhas Chandra Bose, who visited Ireland in 1936, was received by our president, Eamon de Valera, among others. So I merely make these points in order to say that it was no surprise that when the founding fathers of the Indian Constitution sat down with their pens and minds towards drafting a constitution, it was no surprise that they would look to Ireland. The openness to supporting Indian independence and even helping the movement built connections across the United States and made Mr. de Valera very popular in India. In fact, a street in New Delhi is named after him, and he visited India in 1948 as part of his anti-partition platform, built a strong relationship with Nehru, offered regular advice on the framing of the Indian Constitution. During his visit, Nehru hosted de Valera to a dinner with Lord Mountbatten, who was good enough to reciprocate and host de Valera and Nehru to lunch in return. That de Valera was one of the last guests of Lord Mountbatten may indeed have pleased him. So I'm going to conclude, and I'm sorry for running over time, but I was really pleased to have the opportunity of joining you. And on this memorable day of the 72nd anniversary of your Constitution, and having regard to the challenging circumstances under which we meet, you will permit me to conclude with one of my favorite poems by the great Tagore, where the mind is without fear, because I think it's timely for the days in which we now live. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world is not being broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out of the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom. My Father, Let my country awake. It was a privilege to join you. Thank you for the opportunity. Congratulations and every good health and success to Ireland and India.
Thank you, Deputy Charles Flanagan. It was really moving speech, moving remarks from you, and your acknowledgement of our relationship. It is wonderful. But before I invite Damien Nee to formally thank our speakers.
One second. I seek permission to move away because in Indian time it has become night now. I have to attend other things. Thank you very much.
2 more minutes. Thank you, Justice.
Thank you, Justice.
Thank you.
To having such recognition, when I was reading Deputy, your profile, and your father was elected from 1945 to 87, that is a wonderful achievement in any democracy. That shows how much trust you have from people. And that trust is always there. And I also acknowledge when you were Justice Minister and Foreign Affairs Minister, the contribution either to bilateral relations or as a Justice Minister. I have seen so many citizenship ceremonies. I think at that time, there was no backlog. And system was so smoothly functioning. So we need, not in Ireland, I think around the world, the wisdom and vision like you to serve the people and trust that kind of actually you developed and your family developed with the people. That is remarkable. I don't think these examples exist, not at these days, but still. Before we conclude this session, I would like to invite Damien Nee to please give formal thanks to our speakers. And today we have 3 segments. The next segment is panel discussion. And after that, a quiz on Irish and Indian Constitution. So Damien Nee, please.
Thank you. I first visited India many years ago, and I grew to love it in so many different ways. And, you know, what India is the most incredible place that, and it's the people that make it. When you look at, say, statistics and figures and GDP numbers and that, it's a very poor way of marking the quality of a nation and an economy, because the reverence and the appreciation for education that you meet everywhere in India is so heartening. The kindness, the enthusiasm of people to believe that they can change their local community, their city, their nation by their own efforts is just unbelievable. And their appreciation of democracy. And, you know, I've been in a place in Maduri, it's a huge temple complex, and leaving aside what it's about, the fact is when you walk down into the basement of this, it's gargantuan, there's elephants wandering around. It is unchanged for 4,000 years. And you feel the sense of history, of tradition there in a way that we in Europe often don't realize. And the sophistication of the society that was there 3,000-4,000 years ago. And there was a dry dock near south of Chennai. They're excavating at the moment, that's over 4,000 years old, that had 60 ships in it. And I believe that if you take the Western world here, the States, Europe, and India, they're the perfect cross-section of the world, the appreciation of human rights, freedoms, democracy. And okay, America had a bit of a blip there, and it'll teach them to put effort into choosing the candidates, because democracy is really about how you choose the candidates. And a pal of mine wrote a book many years ago on the choosing of political candidates and the processes of it, that was the real essence of democracy. And I got to say, with a little element of pride, that the local people here in choosing the Flanagan dynasty, which is the nearest thing that we have to Indira Gandhi and stuff as a hereditary operation, that I think that we'd put more emphasis and thought into that. And then it's judiciary. And if you take Dr. Adish and Justice Thomas that have spoken there, and the wisdom and the appreciation of the wonder that you can have 1-point-something billion people, and wherever you go in that country, the same simple laws, rules, and regulations apply. And it just gives you great heart for the future. And GDP figures alone aren't an adequate method of defining a thing. And Forbes figures that India will be the world's largest economy by 2050, primarily because of the education, the universal speaking of common language with the States, Ireland at the little crossroads, and we can have a role in that. But Charlie Flanagan is an amazing guy. And, finding the appropriate stage to appreciate that is rare. And rather than speaking on a narrow area down at the county council or often on a single factor, when you hear him roam around so many different areas of expertise and interests and passions, and those are the qualities of great leaders. And that's so I really appreciate, Charlie, you saying the few words and the depth of thought that you put into it. And I believe that with this type of interaction, that over the next 20, 30 years, Ireland and India can have a great future together. And Ireland is the crossroads between America and India, which is my strong belief. We can find a role in facilitating that. We can find a role in being, direct flights from India to here and on to America. We can find a role in the Indians have incredible technical education. We then, having the major American companies in Dublin and such, have a different type of understanding and appreciation. And between the two, there's a perfect merge of future opportunity. And just thank you. And then none of this works without an extraordinary gentleman, Prashant Shukla. Prashant, in his time in Ireland, has become a unique nature of ambassador. He is pragmatic, practical, diplomatic in the extreme, and is appreciated and loved by, I think, the entire Indian community here. And during the beginnings of the pandemic, he was getting not hundreds, thousands of inquiries about repatriation, about problems and issues, and he methodically dealt with all of them. And at the moment, since he gave such a great biography of Charlie, we got to do the same back. Tata, which to me is probably the world's finest large industrial complex. 66% or thereabouts are owned by a range of charities that have been endowed by them. They own a dominant force in steel. They own Range Rover and Jaguar and stuff now. Their project for a common car in India. The range of areas that they're involved in is amazing. But in the pharmaceutical area, they commissioned at the beginning a group to organize testing, because the solution to the pandemic here is testing, testing, and testing. And we have failed to achieve our objectives in that. But Tata have been offering us, they have this 3 lots of tests, a very comprehensive CRISPR technology, which only 2 groups in America are aspiring to doing at the moment. It's an amazing technology. It's cheap, effective, it's scalable, and totally reliable. 99%, it appears. It's nearly finished FDA testing. They're halfway through European testing. And this would allow local and regional testing at airports, all kinds of stuff. They have a saliva test that'll be ready in a month or 2. Again, cheap, effective, and can be done at home, employers of all kinds. And most interesting, they have an antibody test that will also be ready shortly, which is cheap and effective and will allow people to determine the volume of virus that's in their system. They're also working on a vaccine, and as Charlie said, it's virtually a philanthropic approach. Sure, they want to cover their costs, but there is no exploitative element in this because they see the economic benefit coming from allowing the economies of the world to work again. And that, doing this at cost is an investment in ensuring that they have customers for other things and the employment and stuff. So just thank you very much. And if a few of you can hang around for a panel discussion, we have Jerry Henley, who has been instrumental in developing the relationship between Silicon Valley and Menlo Park and Galway in the West, and raising the profile and getting the personal interactions, because ultimately commercial or anything interactions only work if the personal side functions. And Jerry's contribution to Ireland's prosperity is underappreciated. It's one of those soft things like Prashant. And if you can hang around for a minute and hear him play a bit of music, you'll think, wow, no wonder half of Silicon Valley adores the guy. And we can create that same type of personal interaction. Like Bangalore has transformed from, when I saw it first, to just something amazing. And I believe in our own way that Ireland, our little Silicon Valley, runs from the huge Intel plant with 8,000 or 9,000 people up in North Kildare, through the Googles and Microsofts and Facebooks in Dublin, to the huge data centers. And here at the southern tip of it is Portlaoise, which can become the Bangalore of Europe, where we have the thought processes, the people who use the wonderful technology, who use the wonderful chips to form the Microsofts, the Googles, the Amazons of the future. And all we need is Charlie and his pals to make sure that this is facilitated. I don't think this kind of stuff needs funding. It needs enthusiastic appreciation of what's possible and vision. 30 years ago, the IFSC, when people said, oh yeah, that can work, nobody really believed it would. And now if you wander down along the bank of the Liffey and you see what's there, we can recreate that again, possibly in the center of Ireland here, because the future of the world is in the thinking economy, not in making bits and pieces. It's in quality of life. And India has the quality of life. Okay, so that's it now. Thank you, everybody. And
thank you, Damien. Thank you, Deputy Flanagan. We really appreciate your presence. Now we are moving towards the second segment of this event or this celebration, and that is panel discussion. And in this panel discussion, I am going to invite Ms. Devisha Mohan. She is a researcher and she's intern in Ireland-India Council. And can we have her CV, please?
So our first panelist, Ms. Devisha Mohan, is a researcher and has completed her bachelor's in history honors from Lady Shri Ram College, Delhi in 2019. She pursued her master's in Irish history from Dublin City University in 2020. And her dissertation was The Dominance of the Teapot, a survey of Indo-Irish trade relations between 1930.
Our second panelist is John K. Chandy. He's an entrepreneur and he's working and living in Ireland since last number of years.
Mr. John K. Chandy is the CEO of MS Hepta Quantino Inc., that is a student recruiting firm based in New Delhi, India. The firm is recruiting students exclusively to universities, institutes of technology, and colleges in Ireland. Mr. Chandy is a science graduate in First Division from the University of Kerala in India. He has served as a captain in the Indian Army. We welcome you, Mr. John K. Chandy.
Thank you. You are very welcome, John, for this panel discussion. Now, our third guest, he's not guest, basically, he's a host. Damien Nee is a co-chair of Ireland-India Council. So please welcome Damien Nee.
Mr. Damien Nee is a committed environmentalist, is a founding director of EcoED for All, a founder of organdonation.ie. He believes that Ireland and India can forge the kind of relationship that US and Ireland have, leading to democratic alliance. He is a great lover of India and has visited India. He is currently a co-chair of Ireland-India Council.
Thank you. Our next panelist is Mr. C.M. Patel, advocate from India.
Mr. C.M. Patel is an advocate in High Court and Supreme Court of India based in Delhi. He has contested election to seek his membership in State Legislative Assembly. He is a friend of Ireland and has visited here in the past.
Thank you. Now, finally, we have Mr. Jerry Henley. He has a lot of work in heritage and culture. Please welcome Jerry Henley.
Mr. Jerry Henley studied civil engineering at NUI Galway. Following a career in that field, he immersed himself in heritage and culture, which he uses to connect communities. He is a former chair of both Galway Civic Trust and NUI Galway Alumni Board. We welcome you, Mr. Jerry Henley.
You're very welcome, Jerry, here. And I can tell actually a few rules of this panel discussion. So we will put a question to all of you, and please respond as briefly as can, but not more than 2 minutes. And after that, we will put some other questions which audience or other people may be asking. So our first panelist, question goes to our first panelist, Divisha Mohan, researcher.
Our question for you is, how did Ireland and India's relationship develop? How was it sustained?
Hello. Sorry, this is like long, so I'll try to talk about in 2 minutes. But yeah, so basically the question's in two parts, so I'll answer it in two parts. So Ireland and India's relationship, in a sense, began when nationalist links were formed between Irish radical nationalists and Indian radical nationalists, when the respective independence movements were in progress. Historians C.A. Bailey and recently Kate O'Malley have explored the successful formation of ties between nationalists in both countries and how the nationalist agitators engaged with each other and exchanged ideas. The proceedings in Ireland were followed closely by the members of the Constituent Assembly in India, and Ireland was frequently brought up in discussion. De Valera's idea of external association came into practice when India became a republic and joined the Commonwealth. The 1937 Constitution of Ireland had a profound impact on the Constitution of India, and it served as a model. B.R. Ambedkar, the architect of the Indian Constitution, deemed the directive principle embodied in the Irish Constitution worthy of emulation, and how the relationship was sustained. So basically, in the post-war era, sustaining a relationship was extremely challenging because Ireland and India had to transform its relationship from merely having nationalist political links to having a trading relationship. And historian P.G. Fraser contends that Ireland and India would have little in common had it not been for their similar experience of colonial subjugation by Britain. And although there were talks of a shared, Also, there's a talk of like shared history and a hopeful future by both Indian leaders like Nehru and Irish leaders like De Valera. O'Malley observes that a mutually beneficial trade relationship was all either country had to offer each other, although diplomatic relations were established. In 1949, in 1951, India set up its embassy in Ireland, and in 1964, Ireland set up its embassy in India. So, thank you.
Thank you, Devisha. And our next question goes to John K. Chandy. He's an entrepreneur.
Question for you. Educational ties between Ireland and India go back to the early 19th century, when Irish missionaries set up schools in India. Today, Ireland has become an important destination for Indian students. What advice would you give Indian students considering Ireland for higher studies?
Thank you very much for the question. Good afternoon, Ireland, and good evening, India. Wish you a very happy Republic Day. I'm very thankful to Mr. Prashant Shukla and Mr. Damian for making me a part of this activity. So we are basically supporting people for coming to Ireland for education. Our organization is doing that. And coming to the question, yes, from late 19th century, Ireland has contributed a lot to India as far as education is concerned. I do not know whether many people are aware of Dr. Annie Besant, the founder of Theosophical Society of India, who settled down in Chennai, Adayar. And Dr. Annie Besant from Ireland was a founder member of Banaras Hindu University. I don't know whether many people are aware of this historical fact. She was a socialist who took up a lot of revolutionary activities in India. And the second turning point in the history of India happened Mr. Charlie Flanagan mentioned, the Connaught Rangers, an Irish regiment in Jalandhar, based in Jalandhar, revolted against the Britishers after Ireland became independent, and during that time, it motivated a lot of Indian soldiers and Indian people further to fight for independence and get independence in 1947. And later on, if you look at it, Loreto School in Delhi, St. Columbus School in Delhi, and many institutions strewn around the country. I don't have time to name all of them because of paucity of time. They were started by Irish people, and they are still carrying out the legacy of Irish education in India. That is the background of contribution of Ireland towards Indian education. And the next point I want to cover is the continuous involvement of Irish people within India. Irish backpackers and travelers and business people travel all around India. And I was wonderstruck by the knowledge many of my Irish colleagues have about India. Many of them know more about the remote areas of India than I do. I was in the Indian Army. I have traveled all around the country, but I was astonished at the knowledge the people are having about our country. They travel to various interior parts and they study about that. I met the great grandson of the person who translated the first Bible into Tamil. This is the way Ireland is linked with India. And coming to the current scenario, now the change which I am seeing is that a lot of Indian students want to study in Ireland, and they are coming to study in Trinity College, University College, Dublin, UCC, UL, TUD, and all the technological institutes and private colleges in Ireland. Many of them are coming to do research over here, and a lot of workforce is coming to Ireland to join the workforce of this country. And we are acting as a catalyst to, or an interface to, between students and universities. We guide our students to tailor make their subjects and various courses with the universities, and Indian students are doing an excellent performance in Ireland. And for the future, I am finding that the numbers are increasing, and all the students who are coming here, they do very well. And those who are in the proper subject, that is very important. Those who are in the proper subject, we advise all the students to select the topics and all with a bit of experience. They are establishing here, and they are doing very well. Like Mr. Charles was saying, many students want to stay in Ireland, and India wants them back once they are trained. That is the current trend. The quality of education in Ireland is so good. And once again, I thank you, Mr. Prashant and Mr. Damian and the team of Ireland India Council for organizing this splendid event, which is of very high quality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Mr. Damian Nee, co-chair of IIC. The question for you.
Question is, what is your vision for the future of Indo-Irish relations in a post-Brexit, post-COVID-19 world?
I think it has the capacity to be a pivotal thing in this century, because if you take, unquestionably, Europe is the largest consumer group in the world. And whilst making things matters, increased mechanization, robotization and stuff takes away the role of manual labor and that. But the thing that will be needed more than ever is thinking, thoughts, rational decision-making, and education. And there is no question but that India at the moment is, in my mind, along possibly with Singapore and maybe elements of South Korea, has got the best educational system that takes people from X to a wonderful, not just a technical thing, but a thinking and a philosophizing strain of mind. And vision matters. And I remember going along a street or a little road in the middle of nowhere in the Kerala and the southern tip of India near a place, Tuticorin, I think it is. And there was a little guy sitting at the side of the road with a bookstall, and myself and a pal of mine stopped, and he had the most amazing range of books, what they don't teach you in the Harvard Business School and Who Ate My Cheese and all this kind of stuff. And we discovered he was 12. And I said, have you read any of them? Oh, all of them, of course. I would not sell them if I had not read them. And there was Dennis and I, your pal, and we were fascinated that we felt a kid of that age at home might have had comics or football magazines. And that was my absolute confirmation in my mind that India was the nation of the future. And if you take what will matter, it will be people more than everything, because we're now beginning to appreciate people. We need new economic values. It's not how many cars you've got outside or X amount of holidays. It is thanks to technology from India that conferences like this, and it would be lovely to be up in Dublin Castle like we were last year, but in many ways having it like this is nearly even better, because you can sit here, you can have your coffee, and you can see the homes, the backgrounds, and interact with people and maybe have people involved that couldn't travel to this kind of stuff, so that, like our little pal years ago said, it's not the strongest who survive or the most intelligent. It's the people best able to adapt when change is needed. And, India is so incredibly good at that. I think the Irish people are great at that. And if you take why we had so many great writers, and I'm finished then, somebody was like, "Is that?" And I said, no, think about it, guys. We didn't have huge, big machines or equipment or infrastructure, but everybody could have a pencil. And India, in many ways, is people who have adapted most and best from having those incredible, what would have been commercial and amazing infrastructures, those temples I saw from 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, the dry docks that were there, the incredible buildings, and then went through a sort of a Gandhi era thing of extreme simplicity. And they're back again at the forefront of the world. And freedom and democracy and civil rights and human rights matter. And I think we just don't appreciate how wonderful India has been at that. And if we can get here and be India's footprint in Europe, in the way we were America's footprint in the 60s and 70s, we can both do very well from it. And I look forward when this changes to, having hugely improved interaction between India and Ireland, and John K Chandy and what he's doing, because it's bringing people here that matters. And in the 70s, the Germans started a wonderful scheme where they would take 20 or 2 or 3 kids from 70 countries to a location in Germany, and they would all attend second-level school. And one of our friends, Miola Kaneja, was one of the first people on that scheme. One of my daughters took part in it some years ago. And it was with the view that these people would be the leaders of the future. And in many ways, they were correct. And it gave a positive view and understanding of a nation. And I think that John Chandy and ourselves, we can organize, and Jerry Henley, the exchange of maybe even, teenage kids, but we needn't send them on planes anymore, because by choosing schools to twin with other schools and other educational things, and our EcoEd for All project is aimed at kids of 15 to 17 on environmental education, sustainability. And if we can twin schools effectively, where we get to understand the needs of the other thing, people, John Marshall McLuhan's vision of the global village, where what somebody does in one corner of the world affects people in the other. That has really arrived confirmed by the mobility of this virus. So thanks to technology, we can now have people here understand the lifestyle and the needs of people in other corners of the world and work to solve those problems. And that's how you eliminate strife and conflict and terrorism. Okay, so that's a long answer to a short question.
Now, our next panelist is Mr. C.M. Patel, advocate.
Question for you. The inclusion of the directive principles in the Indian Constitution has been attributed to the influence of the Irish Constitution. Do you think this has been a positive legacy?
Mr. Patel, please go ahead. I think Mr. Patel, your microphone is off. Oh no.
Mr. Patel, can you hear us? We can't hear you.
तुमने म्यूट कर दिया है to everyone. Mr. Patel, can you hear me? Mr. Patel, can you hear me?
I think Mr. Patel subscribes to that great philosophical point that people should be seen and not heard.
Yeah.
Go to the next panelist.
So his microphone is actually
It's down at the bottom of the screen, Mr. Patel.
Yes, Mr. Patel, we can't hear you.
Try the bottom left of the screen.
Till he figure out actually how to connect it, I want to go to our next panelist, Mr. Jerry Henley.
Question for you. The cultural influence of Ireland in India and vice versa has been an ongoing process. Does intercultural exchange have a positive impact on bilateral relations?
Jerry, you are also mute.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that is fine.
But not for long.
Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you very much for the question. And thank you, Mr. Prashant and Mr. Damien, for the privilege of being part of India Republic Day. Yes, I greatly believe in the cultural exchange and the positive influences, because going back to areas that Damien referred to there, you know, the sister city principles, which were started, I think, by Roosevelt after the Second World War, and there's hundreds of cities connected, that where you know people and understand them, you're less likely to see them as a threat, much less likely to go to war and have all sorts of business. So the people word has been used many times there today, especially by Damien, and you know, the connectivity of people, absolutely. And culture is not just the singing or the food, the music. It's about really understanding and being able to place yourself in the shoes of people from another country and get to understand them. And then, of course, the result of that is you see that people are 99% alike. The difference is a very small part of it all. So I hugely believe in that. Where people understand each other, you develop trust. And from what I see and observe, that's the basis for doing business internationally, where people have trust, they will invest their money. I just, in listening to all the speakers, I feel a great sense of pride. That's the first thing that came across to me. You know, pride in the people that have gone before us and made all these things possible. The fact that our leaders were in touch with the India leaders back, you know, 60, 70 years ago is enormous. And that's coming across to me today. So yes, I believe in the cultural exchanges. I would hope that in the same way that we have parts of the west of Ireland linked with places in Silicon Valley, that we might be likewise able to do something similar with places. Sorry, I'm just trying to connect my power in here now. Yeah, that we might be able to do that with places in India over the course of time. I could talk for a very long time. I was amazed. I phoned my daughter last night, who is a lawyer, and because I know very little about the Constitution, her familiarity with the India Constitution. So there's a growing increase in various interactions between Ireland and India, and I just see that expanding exponentially, and hopefully on a cultural basis and a business basis. And thank you again.
It is really wonderful. Mr. Patel, can you hear me? I think still there is a problem with Mr. CM Patel's audio, and we may take his views and record it, and we will put it on our website. So thank you all for this panel discussion. Until you all have a question for yourself to your other panelists.
Just a small little thing, and John Chandy might like this. Here's a little silver item that was given to a member of the Connaught Rangers
Okay.
for a range of things that.
Oh, that is very nice to see. Yes.
And
Yes.
it was some sort of a distant relative of mine way back, and it was given to me when I got involved with started going to India. And
we got a question from Forum Tucker, and that is about Damien and John.
Question for Damien and John K. Chandy from Forum Tucker. What is one thing that you would want to change in the education system of India for John K. Chandy, and Ireland for Mr. Damien? And Forum Tucker says, I would also like to know from Ms. Divisha Mohan's view, as she has studied in India and Ireland.
So, shall I go first, if you permit?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Any child who is placed onto the system of education at the age of 3 or 4 in the play school is supposed to come out as a finished product by the age of 21 as a graduate. That is the system in India which was existing. Now the government has changed the system a little bit. The mindset of the parents are that any student must become a graduate by 21, irrespective of what he or she wants to do in life. That is the problem with the system. And the basic skills of using fingers to create something, or playing with the soil or mud or wood or any material, that is not existing. When my daughter was in school, she is a basketball player. She was wanting 6 girls to form a team in the school. The school had 3,000 students, but it was very difficult to find 6 girls to form a team to play basketball. The girls were saying their skin will be tanned or their nails will break if they play games. This is the dangerous trend which is to be changed. We need people to create things using their hands. A carpenter or an electrician or a plumber. Here in Ireland, I find people, even ladies, do everything from plumbing to tile fixing to all activities, to driving a locomotive or a car or a plane. In India also things are changing. I'm not saying that it is not changing. The education system should focus on a primary school where children are made to roll in mud or connect with soil and use their fingers. What differentiates human beings from other animals is the thumb, which can be faced with the other fingers. We can utilize, we can create tools, we can create activities. Our fingers are different. That is why we are ahead of other organisms or animals. We can fight a lion or an elephant with tools which we developed using our fingers. So we should go back to the basics. This is my point.
Thank you, John. And Damien, can you make it actually your brief comment and precise? The reason is actually we are already running very late, and our
we need a whole
new, frustrated.
Okay, that sounds quick. We need a whole new philosophy of education. It needs to be continuous throughout life. What kid of 17 or 18 knows what they want to do? I still don't, and I'm approaching middle age. I might even get free travel in September. But you need the continuous evolution of education. We need far more screen-based stuff, where, like the MOOCs courses and the free access to free course material from some of the great universities of the world, and our EcoEd for All is the same. And then some form of appreciation or no acknowledgement of what people have learned. And that, when I was a kid, there was this great notion you got a steady, permanent job and you retired from it in 60 years' time. As we're growing up, living longer, life expectancy, forgiving COVID, was going to be going on into the mid-80s. And reinvention is going to be the norm. And we need to facilitate that. And for that to work, we need to get away from that hierarchy of manual labor is not a good thing. You can be thinking whilst you're doing manual labor. And the continuous, I know one wonderful Indian university, a large company, wasn't happy with the quality of the engineers it was getting. So it set up its own engineering university, JP Green's, lovely people. And for the first year, people went out, dug holes for a couple of weeks. Then they drove a digger for a couple of months. Then they did drawings for a couple of months. And then they went out and they did finishing and tiling and all that kind of manual stuff. So that when they went to the engineering school, they had an appreciation of what was feasible, what could be done. And they became so much more effective as engineers that Fluor and some of the large American companies set up recruiting offices there, because they got engineers with common sense. Because common sense is something that nobody teaches. Jerry Hanley is a great advocate of common sense and wisdom.
Yes.
And that timing of music and game skills and basketball, you need so many facets, like a beautiful diamond. The more facets you have, the more light that comes in, and the better the future. Thank you.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, Damien. If I could just briefly jump in there, that idea of, and the previous speaker, remembering using our hands, our brains and our hands actually work together, whereas very often the emphasis on education has been just on the academic. Well said, lads.
No.
Hi there. Yes. So hi. I have been privileged enough to have very supportive parents and who were in the position to educate me. But a lot of Indian children, especially female children, do not have the same opportunities. And so basically I was educated in Loreto Convent, Lucknow, which was set up by Irish nuns. And then I went and studied history in Delhi. And I've also studied here. So as it's been already pointed out, I feel like, first of all, it's accessibility is a problem. But once you get into a school, most of our education is based on rote learning and very theory-based. And we kind of lack the opportunities to, say, practically use our knowledge. But and also with the COVID pandemic, a lot of people, it's you have to have the resources to actually be able to conduct classes online. If someone doesn't have access to the basics, say computer or technology, they can hardly continue their education. So I think that's the only aspect of the education system of India I'd be critical of.
Thank you, Devisha. And we still have issues, I think, audio with Mr. Patel. So I want to conclude this session, and we are already delayed more than half an hour for our quiz session. So Devisha, you are going to conduct that session, and I am requesting, because some of our participants who registered and they got frustrated when we haven't started in time. So I invite every one of you to participate in the quiz, and Devisha will put a question, and we are going to add, we have 2 more participants. There's one more here.
Hello.
Hello.
So Devisha, first one by one. The question will go from John to Damien to Jerry to Shantanu to Simran and Shantanu. Simran, can you come online? I know you've got frustrated waiting, and some of other participants as well. And simple thing, who will win? They will have Indian dinner. Or the number 2, who will be on second number, will get a voucher, and the third one as well. So try for dinner.
What's the question?
First question to John K Chandy. Division is moved.
The question is, when did the Constitution of India come into effect?
John?
26th of January 1950.
26 January 1950. So 1 yes for John. The next question goes to Damien.
Who was appointed the chairman of the Constitutional Drafting Committee in India?
It wasn't John O'Toole, was it?
No.
To my great embarrassment, I don't know. And
So
I
this
read all
question-
about the Constitution over the last couple of days.
I'm eliminating Divisha because she had some excess of few questions. So the question goes to Shantanu.
It was Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar.
That's perfect. Shantanu had 1 yes. Can you note down with everybody's name?
Divisha, would you like to continue the quiz?
Thank you. Yep. So the next question is, which
That
famous?
question goes to Shantanu because he responded a bonus question. So ask to Shantanu.
Which famous calligrapher handwrote the Indian Constitution in English?
It was Prem Bihari Narayan Raizada.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
So 2 points for Shantanu, 1 point for John. Shantanu is leading. We got one more participant. Simran, we apologize for the delay, and we will give you 2 extra questions in the last. So the third question will go to, now we are not going to change this symmetry of the screen, otherwise it will be very confusing for me. So John responded, Damien responded, and Jerry Henley didn't get actually 1 question, then Simran, Divisa, and Shantanu. No, Divisa is Quizmaster. Divisa asked question to Jerry.
What are the colors of the Irish flag?
Green, white, and gold.
That's correct. Is that correct, Divisa?
Green, white, and orange.
Orange.
Yep.
Gold.
That's correct. Yeah.
So 1 point to Jerry. The next question goes to Simran.
Hello, Simran. Who was the president of the Constituent Assembly in India?
Simran, can you hear?
Simran, can you hear us?
No, I think she's just moved. So we can put this question. Shantanu already got 1 bonus point. We can now go to John.
Was
John,
it
can
Dr.
you answer
Bhimrao?
this question?
Was it Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar?
No, that's not the correct answer.
Okay.
So what is the correct answer? No, now this question will go to Damien.
Oh,
Damien, no Google.
can you repeat the question?
Can you please repeat the question,
Who
Divisha?
is the president of the Constituent Assembly in India?
The current one or the one in 1950?
The one in 1950.
I'm afraid the breadth of my ignorance is
Jerry, to you.
I pass. Thank you.
Simran, no, she's mute. Shantanu,
It was Dr. Rajendra Prasad.
That is correct.
that's correct. So Shantanu is leading. Now, next question goes to Shantanu, because he haven't got his chance.
Okay. So, which article of the Indian Constitution seeks to make provisions for just and humane working conditions and maternity relief?
That would be Article 42.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Oh,
Well done.
Shantanu, you are leading. And Divisha, when you are putting question, can you write down in the comment box as well, so that participants can get clear understanding of the
Yes.
question. Now we are we completed first round. The second round, first question goes to John K. Chandy.
Okay, so your question is, the architects of the Indian Constitution borrowed the concept of directive principles from, yep, so your options are A, the Constitution of USA, B, the Constitution of UK, C, the Constitution of Ireland, or D, the Constitution of Canada.
I think it is the Constitution of Ireland.
That is correct.
Yeah, thank you.
John, you got 2, so you are leading on number 2. Next question goes to Damien.
Okay, so this one has options as well. So, what does Article 43 of the Indian Constitution seek to promote? A, cottage industries in rural India. B, the prohibition of intoxicants and alcohol. C, the education of children under 14, or D, all of the above.
I'm inclined to think definitely the promotion of cottage industry was a serious element of it.
That is correct. Congratulations. Yep.
Great, Damien. Next question to Shantanu.
So, protection of wildlife comes under which of the following in India? A, fundamental rights. B, fundamental duties. C, directive principles of state policy. Or C, both A, B, and C, which is fundamental duties and the directive principles.
Yeah, it's
What is the
both
question?
fundamental duties and directive principles.
So,
It's both. Yeah.
your answer is option D, and you're correct.
Oh, congratulations, Shantanu. Next question goes to Jerry.
Okay. Which among the following is correct regarding the directive principles? A, that it has positive injunctions. B, that it has negative injunctions. C, that they're justifiable. Or D, none of the above.
C, justifiable.
That's not correct. Would you like to have another go? So
A,
A, positive. Yep, that is correct.
A positive.
Yeah.
A positive. Yeah. Thank you very much.
So good, great from your second attempt. So point goes to you. Yes, next question goes to John K. Chandy. This is the round 3rd.
Okay, so the question is, The term equal pay for equal work is A, fundamental right, B, directive principle of state policy, C, statutory provision in labor law, or D, a fundamental duty?
A provision in the labor law?
Unfortunately, that's not correct.
Okay.
Can you try second time, John?
Shall I repeat the options for you?
Can we repeat the options, John?
Okay, so the question is,
Divisha, please repeat the question
Yeah.
and answer options both.
the question is, where is the term equal pay for equal work found in the Indian Constitution? A, fundamental rights, B, the directive principles of state policy, C, statutory provisions in labor law, and D, fundamental duties.
John.
I am not sure.
Question passes to Damien Nee.
Repeat the question again, like.
Sure. So, where's the term equal pay for equal work mentioned in the Constitution? A, in fundamental rights. B, the directive principles of state policy.
Directive principles of state policy.
Correct. That is correct.
Damien. Next question goes to Damien.
Oh, good.
Okay. The concept of welfare state is included in which part of the Constitution? A, fundamental rights. B, directive principles of state policy. C, preamble, or D, fundamental duties.
Oh, I think A.
That is incorrect.
Okay.
Would you like to have another go?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Just repeat them very quickly.
Okay. A, fundamental rights. B, directive principles. C, the preamble, and D, fundamental duties.
Oh, I
Repeat
think
the question as
preamble.
well.
Then it's preamble.
Oh, I'll repeat the question as well. So, where's the term welfare state found in the Indian Constitution? A, fundamental rights. B, the directive principles of state policy. C, the preamble, or D, fundamental
The
duties.
directive principles of state policy.
That is correct.
If Jerry and I can combine our scores now, we're doing good.
Yes, so the 1
That's
point
right.
goes to Damien. Next question goes to Shantanu.
Okay, Shantanu. So, which of the following articles in the Constitution of India contain the directive principles of state policy? So, option A is Articles 5 to 11. Option B is Articles 12 to 35. Option C, Articles 36 to 51. And Article D, Articles 28 to 48.
That would be 36 to 51.
That is correct.
Congratulations, Shantanu. You are still leading. Next question goes to Jerry.
So your question is, the directive principles of state policy are A, justiciable, B, non-justiciable, C, only some of the provisions are justiciable, or D, none of the above.
Sorry, could you repeat that, please? Sorry.
I shall put it in the comments box if that.
No, it's okay, because I can't actually see that today. No, if you just repeat again, please.
Repeat it clearly. Can you repeat that?
Okay, so A, they're okay, I don't know how to pronounce this honestly, but it's like
Justiciable.
Justiciable.
Oh,
Thank
yes.
you. B, they're not justiciable. C, only some of the provisions are justiciable, or D, none of the above.
Yeah, A, justiciable.
That is incorrect. Sorry.
Okay. How about
Okay,
C?
from this round, there's no actually second option to anyone. So, question goes to John.
Is it that option which says 70%?
Sorry.
Is it the option which says 70%?
Can you repeat question, please, Divisha?
I'll just put it in the comments box.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yep. So that's your first
We can't
option.
get your actually question, Divisha. You please repeat it.
Okay, 1 second. So are the directive principles of state policy are justiciable? B, they're non-justiciable. C, only some of the provisions are justiciable. And D, none of them are, no, none of the above.
Only some of them are justiciable.
That's not correct.
Okay.
Yes, then question goes to Damien E.
You see, now it would depend on whether you wanted it based on the stratifications of dysogeny. Agus go mé an freagar as Squelge.
Damien, we need to only pick a option. Not be diplomatic here.
Sorry?
D.
Option
Option D.
That's incorrect.
Okay.
Now question passes to Shantanu.
Well, there are no other options left, so non-justiciable.
That is correct.
Oh, congratulations. Jerry?
Sorry.
Next, sorry, whose turn is this? This question was to whom, Divisha?
I think it was to me originally.
Or to Jerry. Now, next question is to John. And this is our fourth round.
By which amendment act of the Constitution of India
So,
was the
Divisha,
directive?
we will have actually from here 2 more rounds. So 1 round is going and then next round and then we are concluding this quiz.
That's perfect. Okay, so the question is, by which amendment act of the Constitution of India were the directive principles of state policy given precedence over the fundamental rights whenever they come into conflict? A, Amendment 40. B, the 42nd Amendment. C, the 44th Amendment. Or D, the 46th Amendment.
Was it the 42nd Amendment?
That is correct.
Congratulations, John.
Yeah, that's right.
How many points, John? You have 3 points.
Yeah.
Next question to Damien.
Okay, so the question is, the Panchayati Raj system in India is laid down under which of the following? A, fundamental rights. B, fundamental duties. C, the directive principles. Or D, the Election Commission Act.
No, repeat the question once there.
The Panchayati Raj system in India is laid down under which of the following provisions? A, fundamental rights. B, fundamental duties. C, the directive principles of state policy. Or D, the Election Commission Act.
Fundamental duties.
That is incorrect.
Pass on to this question was to John.
Yeah.
Now, this question question was to Damien.
Yeah.
Yes. So now, next question, we can pass on to Shantanu.
Can you please repeat the question?
The Panchayati Raj system is laid down under which of the following? A, fundamental rights. B, fundamental duties. C, the directive principles of state policy. Or D, the Election Commission Act.
Okay. It's directive principles. Also,
That
it
is
was
correct.
enacted through 73rd and 74th Amendment Act. So,
Wow.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Now, next question to Shantanu.
Which of the following is not included in the directive principles of state policy? A, prohibition of liquor. B, right to work. C, equal wage for equal work. Or D, the right to information.
that would be D, right to information.
That is correct.
Congratulations. So you are really leading everyone. Next question to Jerry.
What is the Constitution of Ireland called in Irish?
Bunrop Naherden.
That is correct.
However,
Congratulations, Jerry.
I always come good in the end.
Final round, and please try. There's our next question to John.
Out of 389 members of the Indian Constituent Assembly, how many were women? So your options are A, 2, B, 15, C, 50, or D, 100.
I will go for 15.
That's B, yes, that is correct. There were only 15 women.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
They did
Next
90%
question
of
to
the work.
Devisha. Next question, Devisha, to Damien.
Hello.
Hello.
Which of the following members of the Indian Constituent Assembly went on to become India's ambassador to Ireland? A. Sarojini Naidu, B. Dakshayani Velayudhan, C. Annie Mascarene, or D. Vijay Lakshmi Pandit.
Naidu.
That is incorrect.
Question goes to Shantanu.
Are we pronounced it different here?
Can you repeat the options?
Vijay Lakshmi Pandit, Annie Mascarene, Dakshayani Velayudhan, or Sarojini Naidu.
I will take a guess. Vijayalakshmi Pandit.
That is correct.
Congratulations. So your guess is correct. Next question goes to Shantanu.
Which of the following are features of the Indian Constitution? A. It is the longest written constitution. B. It established the parliamentary form of government in India. C. It's based on universal suffrage. Or D. All of the above.
It's all of the above.
That is correct.
So whose turn was that? This question was to whom?
Me.
Shantanu.
Shantanu. You put it wrong place, point. The question was to Shantanu. Who answered this question?
I did.
So point goes to Shantanu. And next question goes to Jerry. No, this was
Sorry.
bonus question, or this question you asked to whom, Devisha?
The previous question, Shantanu?
Okay.
Next is Jerry.
Next is Jerry. So this is final question from our quiz. Can you do calculations?
How long did it take the Constituent Assembly to come up with the final draft of the Indian Constitution? A. 6 months. B. 1 year, 8 months, and 27 days. C. 2 years, 11 months, and 18 days. Or D. 3 years.
Jerry, I can give you a clue. India became independent on 15th August 1947.
Yes.
So,
Okay. I would go for option D, 3 years.
That is incorrect. Sorry.
Thanks, Prashant, anyway. Appreciate it.
now this question goes to John Chandy.
Don't believe
Is
it.
it 2 years plus? 2
Is
years
it-
plus?
Can you repeat options, Devisha?
Option A, 6 months. Option B, 1 year, 8 months, and 27 days. Option C, 2 years, 11 months, and 18 days. Or D, 3 years.
Option B.
That is incorrect.
Yeah.
Question goes to Damien.
Okay. I'm going to pick, was it 2 years and 11 months? Or...
Congratulations, that is correct.
Congratulations, Damien. So this is our final round, and now we have the score.
I'm betting on Shantanu.
Congratulations, Shantanu. You are clear winner.
Thank you.
got 11 points.
Thank you.
And the number, this is what? The second, actually, we got two people on second place. One is John and another one is Damien. So congratulations,
Congratulations.
Damien. And third one is Jerry. So congratulations to all. And,
No, we always need equality here. I want to ask Divisha, can she name the fullback of the Longford Camogie team from 1957?
Can I have some options?
Oh, absolutely. You can
Good
ask
reply.
Gaelic or Hindu.
I'm sorry?
Well done with the questions. Great questions.
I think Damien got freeze. So thank you so much for everyone participating in this
Thank you.
quiz. And I
Thank
want to give some brief introduction of Shantanu. Shantanu is preparing for Indian Civil Services, and the kind of knowledge he had, I wish him actually very well for his competition. And another
All the
is
best
he's
for everything.
participating from India. So Damien, we need to organize his trip to Ireland because he's due for his dinner. So congratulations, Shantanu. Thank you, everyone. And we are already actually delayed. And we want to thank everyone and want to close it. And our next part was the music. And the music we will have at some other time. So because it was delayed and it is long overdrawn broadcast. So with the permission of everyone, can we declare it closed?
Yeah, sure.
So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Mhm.
Namaste.
Republic Day. Namaste.
Namaste.